Hi, this is Jonathan Fries, and today I'm going to be talking about software that I created called Query Events. And what this does on a high level is allow you to create SQL queries and then run them and email them out without having to do any of those processes manually. And this has a lot of advantages, which we're going to go over. So first off, let's talk a little bit about how ad hoc queries are usually handled. So someone writes the query, of course, and then it needs to get emailed. So they're going to run the query. They're going to drop that into Excel, and then they're going to have to email it out, right? And so if these emails need to be sent to the same person every time, obviously that's just a lot of wasted time. If you're sending an email to four people and you have to type in the names every time, that can be a huge waste of time. And it's also just really dangerous. Since it's manual, you can type in the wrong email address, right? You're using Outlook, you start typing it in, you think just typing, JO is going to get you to the right person. So you just type JO tab, you're not thinking about it, and suddenly you're sending private information to the wrong people. And that's a huge problem. I mean, it can be legal problems, but it can just be, you're sending one client's information to another, and maybe it's not legally protected, but obviously that's going to be a huge problem for the clients. Or if you accidentally send it to somebody internal instead of, so like, okay, well, you didn't actually send out information to anyone that shouldn't have it, but now the person who should have it doesn't have it, right? That's also a problem. So what we need to do is think about what that really means. So who can run these queries? Well, it's going to only be a handful of people who have access to SQL Server, right? So if those are the only people who can run it, then obviously you're putting a lot of pressure on those people to make sure those are always run. How long does it take? Are we talking about a 10-second process or a 5-minute process? And people think like, oh, well, it's only 5 minutes. But of course, if you're running 10 of these, that's suddenly taking almost an hour, right? So even if the individual one doesn't take a ton of time, it can still be a huge problem for the company wasting people's time. And those errors that I was talking about, right? Like that's going to be a huge issue. Um, you need these to be right, and you need them to be sent out to the right people. Um, and so you have to think about these errors. How big of a deal is it going to be if there are errors? Is it confidential information that you could potentially send to the wrong person? That is a huge issue. But even more than that, if you're dealing with something like medical records, then you don't want really even the person sending out the query to see them. The fewer people who see that information, the better, because then there's less chances of having a HIPAA breach, right? And for those of you who don't know the medical industry, that's a big deal. Huge fines for both the company and the individuals. So we want to make sure that as few people see confidential information as possible. There's just no reason for a person who's just simply running the query and sending it out to even see the information. So limiting that as a potential space for a breach is a huge deal. So we could solve this using SSRS, which is a Microsoft reporting system. And that's a good solution, but it does have some drawbacks itself. So changes happen, right? And if you create a SSRS report, then it's hard to get those changes into it. It's not just an ad hoc query that somebody can go in and change a couple lines of code and change it. So this also requires IT investment, right? So suddenly, instead of just a really simple, quick change, it takes a while in order to get it done. It's the IT resources. Um, and you don't really want to have to put in a help desk ticket anytime, one person leaves a company and somebody else comes in to take their place, right? You don't want to be wasting IT's time with that. So whether it's just a quick change to the query itself or a change to who it's getting emailed to, you don't want to waste IT time. You would much rather just be able to fix the problem and move on. And of course, you're going to have to test any changes that IT makes. Going through the proper IT channels, there's always a lot of red tape, and there's good reason for that red tape with the type of things that they're usually doing. But if you're only updating just someone's email address to, a new employee or just adding someone to it, going through a full IT testing is probably not really necessary. But if you use a traditional IT approach, it's going to be what they want to do because they have their routines that they have to maintain. So, talking about query events now. So, what are we going to do to fix this, right? So, query events gives us something a little bit between SSRS and ad hoc. So, it has re the report built in, right, like SSRS. So, you don't have to be manually running it. You don't have to worry about, wait, what did I save the file as? It has everything in there, but it runs the report for you. It handles a lot of that processing. So it's sort of between those two options. This can be used by non-IT employees, and I think that's one of the biggest benefits of this. There's no IT employee investment past the actual creation of the query itself. And many companies have non-IT employees who actually run queries, so it's possible that there could be no IT investment in this at all, allowing them to focus on things that are much more important and higher priority. So what it does is it's going to save the query location, right? So that you don't have to remember that every time. And it also will save who to send the email to, so you don't have any of those issues with sending it to the wrong person, or just forgetting who to send it to. Like, man, I'm supposed to send this to 10 people. I can remember 9 of them, but I don't know who the 10th one is, right? Like, it gets rid of that problem as well. And it's always going to send it to the right people, and it's always going to be the right query. And I think that's sort of the big takeaway from what this does. The right people with the right query, which means you're getting them the right information. And it's going to be every time without any problems. And that's obviously a huge deal to make sure that you don't have to worry about it. So it's not ad hoc, but it doesn't take any of the time of the IT employees. So it's a big deal. So how secure is this? Because obviously, security is a huge issue. So that's definitely where we're going to start. First off, it requires a login. So you have to have access to the servers in order to be able to use this software. If you don't have access to the servers, you can't use it. This is a really important thing. So while you don't have to be IT necessarily to use this, they do have to be involved in who can use it to make sure that we don't have the wrong people accessing information. So the database authorization, that is basically a separate username and password that is required to get into the database. So the IT can take that away, can extend it to new people at any time without any problems. Um, this means that you can quickly change who receives the emails because it's not going through IT. And that's a big security issue because of what I was talking about earlier with the wrong people receiving the information. If, John Smith was supposed to receive this private confidential information yesterday, but he's not with the company today, you don't want to send it to him. Um, so it's really important to be able to quickly change who can get these emails to prevent any kind of information breach. And as I've talked about many times, you can't type in the wrong email. I'm going to stress that again. That's a huge potential risk that you really need to be careful of anytime that you're sending out, private information. So how do we actually do this? So on the right, you see what the query event software actually looks like. So you can see on the left, you have the different queries that you are wanting to send out, and on the right, you have the information about those. So you have an event name, so just an easy way so you can identify what it is. You have the path to where the SQL file is located. And obviously in a professional environment, you'd be wanting that on a network drive that everyone has access to. And then below that you have the email addresses that this is going to be getting sent to. So in order to run events, first you're just going to select the event, right? There's a little checkbox there, you're going to click on it, and that's going to select it. Then you click on Execute SQL, and it's going to run the query, and it's going to email it out. And that's it. So it's super simple. Once the queries are in here, anybody can do it in just 2 clicks. So very fast, very efficient. And it does also allow for selecting multiple queries. So if you have 10 queries to send out, you can select all 10 of them and then go ahead and just hit Execute SQL, and it will run all 10 of those queries and email them out. So how do we add a new query to this? So you're going to click on the Add button, and you're going to put in the event name. You're going to select the ellipse, select the file that you want to use as the SQL, add emails, click the little plus sign to actually add it into the query, and then click the Add button. That's it. So trying to make this as straightforward and easy as possible. And you can see that now that new event that was just created is in the list, so you can use it. But let's say you made a mistake, or you need to update that email address to make sure that it goes to the right people. So we're going to want to be able to edit the queries as well. So you select the query, so it's located on the right. You can see that my query event is the event that's on the right. Then you're going to click the edit button, and it's just going to bring up the information. And it's the same information that you had earlier. You make any changes that you want to make, add a new email address or change the event name, and then you click update. And once again, pretty straightforward, pretty simple to make sure that anybody can use this. All right, so what did we go over? You can create query events, and you can set up the queries and set the emails to make sure that people can use this quickly and easily without any issues. And then you can run the query events. So you run the queries, it sends the emails out automatically. So the setup is really easy, running is really easy, and then it handles all of that routine processing for you so that you can't make any mistakes. So that is the process in order to get the emails sent out. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. This is Jonathan Fries once again.